Hello followers at Regeneration International. We're back here at COP25 and today is World Soil Day. And I'm here with a very interesting guest. Hello.
Hi, I'm Martin Frick. I'm the Senior Director of UNFCCC and the former Climate Change Director of the Food and Agriculture Organization.
Martin Frick, thank you very much for being with us today. We were talking about how countries can meet their Paris Agreement commitments. And we were talking about soils. And you have quite an expertise on that.
Yeah, well, I think that soils are absolutely instrumental in fixing the climate crisis. If you consider that more than half of the world's arable land is moderately to severely degraded, there is an enormous restoration potential. Earlier today we started the high-level event on forests, and I made that point that nothing puts more pressure on forests than agriculture. And that doesn't need to be, because if you restore the soils that you have, if you go into agroforestry systems, into silvopastoralism, if you do restorative agriculture, nitrogen fixes, all of that, you can bring back degraded land back into the use of agriculture. And that means removal of enormous quantities of carbon out of the atmosphere, having more fertile lands, better water management, and it's a solution that works with and for the poorest people on this planet.
Is there a need for a transition in conventional farming systems for this to happen? And what would be, if so, what would be the steps to take?
I would rather speak of a transformation of the entire food systems, because everything is interconnected. Yes, you need to go into different farming practices. We need mixed cropping systems. We need agroforestry. We need restorative agriculture. But you also need to factor in that farmers are actually stewards of the land. They can help us keeping this planet alive, and that should be worth something. So when we start topping up the salaries of smallholder farmers by paying them for the ecosystem services they are providing, then we are up to a solution.
Can there be a link made between land degradation on farmland from the use of agrochemicals?
That is to the experts to say, but what I can say is degraded land is also a giant emitter of carbon, and bringing that carbon back with sustainable agriculture, with healthy foods, actually means increasing the soil organic carbon content. And that is proven to be done by organic agriculture, by restorative agriculture, by mixed systems.
What policies need to be put in place?
Well, you know, the Paris Agreement is built on nationally determined contributions, NDCs. And if countries are looking into their climate contributions, they must talk to the farmers, they must talk to the food sector and factor that in. And next year is the time. We are building ambition for higher climate targets. And I believe, particularly in developing countries, agriculture must be centerpiece of the NDCs.
Policies that can help gradual change come to agriculture, because a lot of farmers are finding it hard when the new environmental policies come into place. Recently we saw the demonstrations that were happening in Berlin due to the environment minister asking the farmers to use less fertilizer.
Well, you have to look at the whole picture. Farmers are traditionally interested in yields. The higher the yield, the higher the income. So this logic often leads to degraded lands, because you basically press out everything on the piece of land that you can. If you go for a system of agriculture that is more in tune with the laws of nature, then there might be differences in the yields. But look at what we are doing, and this is why I'm saying let's speak about a system. We are wasting 1/3 of the food that we are having. So I would rather have a little bit less food, but more nutritious and healthy food, and a system that is not built on waste, but is built on what you actually need. And talking about the farmers and their dissatisfaction, well, like anyone else, a farmer is someone who wants to make a living. But is that living only measured in quantities, or is that by being part of a landscape, by managing the land, by being one of the providers of the water supply for big cities, for example? And if we widen our way of thinking to a systems thinking, then we are coming to acknowledge how centrally important farmers are. But then we're in a different discussion, and it's not just how much fertilizer do I dump on a piece of land to squeeze out what kind of yield. It needs to be broader.
Thank you so much for your time. Just one last question. what is the size of the opportunity when we're looking at the amount of degraded land where we can increase soil organic matter in soils?
Oh, there are hugely different numbers out there, but they are all enormously high. And one thing is, if you stop unsustainable farming, you stop emitting. And the second thing is, if you go into restorative agriculture, you can really draw down gigantic amounts of carbon because so much has been lost. If you think about the American Midwest, for example, when the white settlers came, soil magnitudes to 6 to 8 meters were actually a reality. And then in the time between First and Second World War, Big Depression, the Dust Bowl, it went down to 8 centimeters, and that was the reason for all the poverty. So obviously there is an enormous potential to draw down gigantic amounts of carbon, and it has to be a part of the global climate solution. To me, restorative agriculture is an agriculture that is augmenting the quality of the land, that's improving soils as opposed to degrading the land. And one of the key measurements is the content of soil organic carbon in soils. So if you do that, if the content of soil organic matter is increasing in your soils, you're obviously doing something right. And if the water that's flowing from your fields is drinkable, then you also do something very right.
Martin Frick, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Please follow us. We'll be back with more interviews here at COP25 in Madrid.